Right now on KCCI 8 News Close-Up, the nominations are in. Both Republicans and Democrats have named their pick for the presidency. We hear from one Iowan who went to the White House for the RNC. Plus, a look at how both parties handled the conventions. We talked to KCCI political analyst Dennis Goldford about the big differences. Close-Up starts right now.
This is Iowa's news leader. This is KCCI 8 News Close-Up.
Both major political conventions are now in the books. Last week, President Trump accepted the Republican nomination at the White House. More than 1,000 people were at the South Lawn Thursday night as the president wrapped up the 4-day convention. Many delegates were told to stay home, but in the crowd was one Iowan. David Barker is a delegate from Iowa City. He was one of the few invited to the South Lawn to see the president speak. KCCI Cynthia Fodor caught up with him as he was heading home.
Have you been to a convention before, or was this your first?
Yes, I was at the 2016 convention in Cleveland.
And how would you say this one compared? Totally different.
Yes, very, very different. Cleveland was huge crowds, a lot of receptions and parties. There was none of that here. But there were about 330, I think, delegates there, and we got some work done. We had committee meetings. I was on the credentials committee that met. We had some business to do. I was also able to sit in on some of the RNC committee meetings, budget committee, rules committee, executive committee, that sort of thing. And also met a lot of other people from different parties around the country. One thing that I'm involved in is an effort to try and look for best practices from state parties around the country and use their ideas to improve what we're doing in Iowa. So I was able to talk to a number of delegates from other states about that.
And what ideas are you bringing back?
Well, we don't know yet. But we're going to be talking with a lot of these people ongoing. We're studying a lot of their bylaws and constitutions to see how they differ from Iowa. And we're kind of setting up some relationships with other parties so that we can, work on ideas.
And usually these conventions are a lot of fun and people in costumes and a schmooze fest and listening to speeches. What was your typical day like?
Well, it was really just a series of meetings. So we would go to, say the credentials committee meeting. Everyone would be distanced, sitting, 6 feet or more apart, going through the business of the committee. Then that would finish, and then we'd go into another committee meeting. Then on Monday, we had the large gathering that looked a little more like a convention. We had the signs for each state and the state delegations all together. And that was, and then we went through the state voting, and that was fun. But again, not the same level of energy. I shouldn't say that. There was a lot of energy, just not the same number of people in the room.
And where were you? How did you watch the big speeches in the evening?
Well, so the business in Charlotte concluded on Monday, and then the speech. Then most people went home. Some were invited to different events. I was invited to the acceptance speech last night, so I went from Charlotte up to Washington, D.C. And then last night I was on the South Lawn to hear the that program.
Well, that's interesting. And tell me, what was it like to be there? I mean, the stagecraft there with the fireworks and.
The fireworks were spectacular, and just being there, right, near the Rose Garden and the White House, it was really a very memorable evening.
So usually conventions and things like this and all the speeches, it's a chance to fire up the base. are you feeling energized to come back to Iowa and really go to work for
Yes.
President Trump?
Very much so. You know, and we hear back from a lot of our delegates who were not able to come. They're very interested in what's going on, and we're watching. I think there's a lot of optimism, a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm on the part of all of the delegates and others that I met.
And your final thoughts as you're driving back to Iowa on the RNC?
You know, it was really, even though it was different, it was an honor to be part of it. It was, I really enjoyed it very much. It was a great opportunity to network, connect with people from other states, and to see, get a little glimpse of how, you know, I'm on the budget committee of the Republican Party of Iowa, and it was great to be able to sit in on the budget committee meeting for the RNC to see how things work in the big leagues. So that was kind of fun, and then, you know, last night was just really spectacular, interesting, fun to be a part of.
And just one question along those lines. I mean, there was, you know, the commentators last night were talking about how there didn't appear to be a lot of distancing last night. And I saw that 2 or 4 people who were at the convention now tested positive. Did you feel they were taking safety precautions all along?
Yes. You know, this was an outdoor event, and with a lot of room to spread out. And so, no, I felt perfectly safe.
Ahead on Close Up, Barker recaps President Trump's key points and says what it will take for Republicans to retain the White House.
Real estate executive Teresa Greenfield.
Welcome back to KCCI 8 News Close Up. We continue our talk with David Barker as he heads back to Iowa from the Republican National Convention. KCCI's Cynthia Fodor asked him about the key message President Trump delivered to voters on Thursday night.
So I think the most important was a positive message of, you know, what he plans to do, and so yeah, I think that was the main thing. That it was not a series of complaints or negative messages. I think it was a very positive vision of you know, what the party's goals are and what his goals are for a second term.
And there also there was talk about that the party did not present a platform the way it normally does at a convention.
Right. That's right. So they decided only to bring the delegates that were absolutely necessary to get the business of the convention done. And that was the Credentials Committee, so which I happened to be on the Credentials Committee. And so we were all brought here. They decided not to, because they didn't want to bring too many people down because of the safety protocols for COVID. So they decided not to bring the platform committee to Charlotte and basically just adopt the most recent platform. And, I think a platform, if it's good, should contain really kind of timeless principles. And updating it every 2 years is probably not the most important thing. The platform is important, but if it's done right, it should be able to, last longer than 2 years. The Resolutions Committee did address some other issues, which were, very similar to what we would have done if we had amended the platform. So there was some updating of it, but that was just a decision based on the circumstances.
Do you think there was enough emphasis this week on some of the issues of the day? For example, the chaos we're seeing in Kenosha. I know the president tried to differentiate himself as being the law and order president. Do you think he was able to do that?
Oh, yes, I think so. So, yes, there was some discussion of that a few times. And interesting last night to see the endorsement from the police union in New York City. We're seeing that across the country, that law enforcement groups who are on the ground and know what's going on are supporting the president.
And what do you see as the most important issues that you're concerned about, that you think President Trump would best address?
I think certainly an important issue is economic recovery from the COVID pandemic. I think it's not the time for radical proposals. I think it's time to get back to the policies that were working before COVID. And those policies were working very well. I think, we had the strongest economy in history just 6 months ago. Economic growth was starting to slow during President Obama's second term. Economic growth picked up when President Trump took office, and I believe because of some of the tax and regulatory policies that he supported. And I think that's the kind of approach that we will need post-COVID to get back to that strong economic growth.
What do you think it will take, David, for the president to win Iowa? It looks neck and neck.
Yeah, it'll take a lot of hard work. It'll take a lot of people making phone calls and safely knocking on doors to engage in dialogue with voters and let them know our side of the story. I think that's the most important thing, and continuing to work on policies that are good for Iowa, like sound trade policies, deregulation, letting agriculture do what it does best without a lot of red tape and interference.
Next on Close Up, KCCI political analyst Dennis Goldford compares the differences about both national conventions. Welcome back to KCCI 8 News Close-Up. Democrats and Republicans now have their pick for president. In the last 2 weeks, both parties held their national conventions. Cynthia Fodor spoke to KCCI political analyst Dennis Goldford about the differences.
Well, thanks for joining us today, Dennis. And you have seen quite a few Democratic and Republican conventions over the years. What did you think of the Republican National Convention this week overall? What stood out to you?
Well, obviously, both parties were concerned about not having the opportunity to do a live convention in the traditional sense. Candidates tend to feed off the enthusiasm of the crowds. Journalists love covering live conventions because of the various things that can happen. Now, you don't want them to spin out of control the way the 1968 Democratic Convention in Chicago did, labeled afterwards, I think it was a police riot. But still, the Democrats along the lines of what's happening this year planned all along to do a virtual convention, so to speak. And again, if you remember Harris's speech, the third night of the convention, it's just sort of very odd speaking to an essentially empty hall. But the Democrats planned to do it this way all along. The Republicans, under pressure from the president, very much wanted to do a traditional live convention until North Carolina wouldn't let them do it. And they talked about doing it in northern Florida and the peninsula, but that didn't work out either. But this is a president who very much thrives on the sort of call and response you get at his rallies. So they wanted to try to do this as much as possible. And you saw that certainly for the final night, but also for the third night with Vice President Pence, but certainly the last night with the president, you had crowds of some size, even if it wasn't what they would have had at a live convention in normal circumstances. And
the stagecraft involved with the Republican convention versus the Democratic convention. I mean, you had Vice President Mike Pence at Fort McHenry and the Old Glory waving and a crowd of people in front of him. You had Kamala Harris again, in front of empty chairs. Do you think that made a difference for Republicans in terms of energy and enthusiasm?
Republicans, of course, as we know, went up to the line or else even crossed over the line in terms of supposedly violating the norm, if not the law, the Hatch Act, that you can't use government personnel and government property for overtly political purposes. And as in so many cases, the president simply swept that particular norm aside. The problem is for the Democrats is the Republicans' approach is, so what are you going to do about it? But that may have helped them a little bit. They certainly wanted to have all the trappings of being the incumbent, being in office, holding power right now. As the president said at one point that last night, we're here and you're not with regard to the Democrats. But we, as of the end of the week, we didn't yet have the ratings, if you will, to speak so crassly, for the final night of the Republican convention. But of the first three nights, the night the president's wife spoke, those ratings, the audience was roughly the same size it was for the Democrats' night, that second night the week before. But the first and the third nights of the Republican convention had a lower audience viewership, at least as normally registered on the TV networks, cable and broadcast, than the Democrats did. So we'll find out at least once we get past once we're past the end of the weekend and so forth, how the president did in terms of viewership on his night. A lot of people are looking forward to it, certainly, but to a great extent, in the cases of both conventions, they're preaching to the choir. They're talking to people by and large that already support them.
And they both certainly used this opportunity to fire up their base. But how significant are these conventions and speeches to or for undecided voters right now?
One argument is that there aren't really that many undecided voters in the country, statistically speaking. and that this election will be a base election. In other words, you don't worry about trying to convert somebody new to your side. You try to motivate your own people to turn out for you. And both parties certainly attempted to preach to that choir to motivate the base to turn out. But at the same time, historically, unless there's some sort of a catastrophe or something remarkable that happens at a convention, neither of which happened at these conventions over the last 2 weeks, they haven't moved the needle very much. At the same time, we have to remember, just as Vince Lombardi said of football years and years ago, football is a game of inches. Well, this election, like the one in 2016, will be a game of inches. So even the smallest kind of movement, particularly the way it plays out in particular states, could end up making the difference.
We wrap up our conversation with Dennis Goldford right after this. Welcome back to Close Up. KCCI's Cynthia Fodor wraps up her conversation with political analyst Dennis Goldford about the differences between the Republican and Democratic national conventions.
We have 2 months to go here. For the next 2 months, we have two major events in our country right now of coronavirus and the chaos right now in Kenosha. How important are these two events and how they play out? How much weight will that have on the outcome of this election?
The election obviously is driven by the problem of the pandemic, the problem of economic distress, if not threatened clash, the problem of racial tension. So the election is certainly about all three of those. Now, of course, the Democrats want to say the election is about a president who is uncaring and incompetent. That's their particular argument. So they want to make the election, as many people have noted, simply a referendum on the current administration. Are they competent? Are they able to solve our very pressing problems? And the Democrats' answer is no. The Republicans want to make the election not a referendum on a president, but a choice between the two. And basically, they want to say, yes, President Trump has done a wonderful job. If you listen to his speech last week, you wouldn't really know that there were many problems in the country. But he wants to argue that his administration has done a wonderful job. But he wants to argue that the other side will overthrow all of that. They'll undermine and destroy all we've accomplished. This is why the president and the Republicans have constantly used terms like radical, extremist, socialist and socialism. So they're trying again to say the other side poses a completely unacceptable alternative if we want to continue our American way of life. With all that, we have to remember that events can blow up out of nowhere, just as Kenosha did. So we've got to remember that as we look ahead to the remaining weeks before the election, a lot can happen that just nobody can predict.
Iowa is an important state. You think we'll be seeing more ads out here in the next 2 months and more visits?
That depends upon what the internal polling on each side shows the lay of the land to be like. We've already seen a ton of ads on TV up to this point. Remember the old days in which really politicking and ads and all of that didn't really start until after Labor Day. That's gone by the wayside. We've been inundated with ads all summer. There's all sorts of money sloshing around on both sides to pay for these ads. So we'll see even more ads. You just can't turn on the TV, certainly during news time, without getting a ton of ads, one following another, one denying what the previous one just maintained. So we're really in for it. And, you know, a lot of people probably already are thinking, oh, please just make it stop. But no, we're in for being deluged with all this.
Thank you for joining us for KCCI 8 News Close-Up. We'll see you back here next Sunday.